Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Uh, this is our Intro to Fundraising Ask Me Anything event for March 2021. My name is Jake O'Shea. I'm Capital Factory's Investor Relations Manager, leading the investor relations team here at Capital Factory. Every day, I work with founders to help them craft their fundraising strategy and execute raising money from institutional venture capitalists. What I really love about this event is that we all get to dive deep with an investor together to better understand their thought process and hopefully help you be more successful in your own fundraising endeavors. Today, we're speaking with Heather Buffo, Venture Growth and Partnerships Lead at Republic. She's got a really interesting story and some unique insights into venture funding that I'm really excited to dive into. But before we start, I want to give a second to hear some words from Capital Factory founder and CEO Josh Baer.
Howdy, my name is Joshua Baer, and I'm the founder and CEO of Capital Factory. Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas, the #1 state for startups in the US. Thousands of entrepreneurs, programmers, and designers gather day and night, in person and online, for meetups, classes, and co-working. With boots on the ground in Austin, Dallas, and Houston, we meet the best entrepreneurs in Texas and introduce them to their first investors, employees, mentors, and customers. Capital Factory has invested in more than 300 Texas startups over the past decade. Whether physically in person or virtually online, Capital Factory is buzzing with energy and activity every day. Start with all the geekiest events on meetup.com and sprinkle in out-of-town guests, book signings, hackathons, innovation conferences, and pitch events. We're talking about thousands of participants every month. Most of the events are free, open to the public, and streamed over the internet. Capital Factory is all about community. Everyone's here to meet other people who can help them on their journey or to help others find their way. We kick off every morning with a text-based Ask Me Anything session with a mentor or investor in our Slack channel. Anyone in our community can ask questions in real time, and everyone else can see the answers. These are some of the most active investors and the most successful entrepreneurs in Texas. Those same mentors and investors do regular office hours where they volunteer a few hours a month. It's easy for any of our community members to find people with specific interests or expertise and to book a 30-minute meeting with them. With hundreds of mentors and investors in the network, there are dozens of meetings happening every day. Our co-working space provides desks, offices, conference rooms, classrooms, a podcast room, a video conferencing booths, and more. But the most important spot is the kitchen, because that's where everybody comes together. That's the real reason everyone's here, to meet each other. And every day at Capital Factory is demo day. Maybe it's the local angel investor network or a venture capitalist from out of town. Maybe it's one of the Fortune 500 scouts looking for new tech or a state or federal government official. It's delegations from other countries, school kids, army generals, and celebrities. We've helped entrepreneurs get in front of Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, and even President Obama. How do we know who to put in front of the president? Well, first, they go through an intensive interview and assessment process where they're vetted by our staff and our mentor network. We categorize them by industry and technology and score them based on traction and potential. Then, they have to work their way up to the top. On the way, they'll often meet with members of our Innovation Council of Fortune 500 scouts looking for startups with technology that can give the big companies a competitive advantage. They're hanging out in the kitchen of the co-working space and in our Slack channels online. They partner with startups to go after big government contracts with the Army Futures Command, Air Force Ventures, and the Texas Military Department. The money is flowing. In the past year, 30 startups in our community received more than $60 million in non-dilutive funding through government programs. Capital Factory is also the official Google Tech Hub for Texas. Google plugs us into a global network of other entrepreneurial communities and creates unique opportunities to help our startups attract investors, increase diversities, and access Google services. All of this activity creates exclusive deal flow and data for our investment fund. Our goal is to invest in the best deals in Texas, no matter who leads them. Over the past 10 years, we've secured $110 million in pro rata, super pro rata, and follow-on rights in more than 600 companies. We watch them all interact with our mentors, investors, Innovation Council, and each other, so we know which ones to invest in. Some of our most successful companies include Aceable, Coder, Data.World, Icon, Sensei, Storable, and WP Engine. Are you ready to quit your job and become an entrepreneur? Do you know someone who is? That's who I want to meet. And those are the kind of people who I can introduce you to. You can message me directly on Twitter at Joshua Bear or email me at josh@quityourjob.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. Always great to hear from you. So as I mentioned earlier, our guest today is Heather Buffo from Republic. Heather's the Venture and Growth Partnerships lead at Republic, which is the leading investment platform that's giving individual people the power to invest in the future they believe in by providing access to startup investing, real estate investing, blockchain, and even video game investments. Heather's work focuses around building meaningful partnerships that create a supportive community for diverse investors and diverse founders. She brings a really interesting dynamic background in education, nonprofits, philanthropy, tourism, and project management to this financial technology industry. Heather's super enthusiastic about companies that elevate women and put children at the center, and is proud to lead the Republic Venture Partner Program. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Neurobiology from Harvard University and is a City Year Boston AmeriCorps alumni. So really excited for this conversation today. With that, I'd like to invite Heather to the virtual stage. Hey, Heather, how's it going?
Hi, Jake. Thanks for having me. Hello, Capital Factory family.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Good to see you again. I think to start off, I've got a couple of questions, and everybody in the audience, please be typing out your questions for Heather in the chat as well, and we'll get to those in just a second. The first question is, equity crowdfunding's obviously been blowing up the last couple of years, but I'm still noticing that founders don't have a solid understanding of kind of how that process works and all the pieces that go into it. Can you give us kind of a high-level overview of running a fundraising campaign through Republic and what types of considerations founders should make when deciding what to do?
Absolutely. So I will quickly go over our kind of due diligence process and then get into what a campaign actually looks like in practice. So at Republic, we look for companies that are looking to raise up to $1 million, although starting next week, that'll be $5 million in equity crowdfunding from their audience. So we look at, a lot of things that a lot of investors look at: team, traction, financing history. We do very deep due diligence. We have a very rigorous process. But essentially, we get founders on a call with our business development team, get some kind of high level information. If it seems like a good timing, good fit, we'll move them on to our due diligence process. And our due diligence team will collect, again, all that really deep information about the business, the ins and outs, and whatever information an investor would need to make an investment decision. If that company passes our due diligence process, we will offer them a campaign agreement, which is a non-binding document just stating what type of offering you plan to make, what type of security. And then the onboarding process takes about 4 to 6 weeks, and then you launch your campaign. So once a campaign is launched with Republic, they typically last about 90 days. One of the nice things about a Republic campaign is that it's very flexible capital. So if you end up raising additional money and you want to close your round earlier, you can enter your campaign earlier. If you need a little more time, you can extend it. It's really flexible, but on average, it's about 3 months. During your campaign, you'll have a dedicated account manager who helps you in your onboarding process. So setting up your deal page, that's what we call the actual website page that has your campaign, all of your information. And then they'll also assist you in the legal process of having your finances reviewed, having your Form C filed with the SEC, all of the guidelines that go along with the legal requirements of regulation crowdfunding. And then throughout your campaign, they'll support you in promoting it. So we ask that all of our portfolio companies raise a minimum initial amount from their communities. And then after that, we kick in some marketing on their behalf. So some paid advertising, newsletter blasts, launch emails. We have over 1 million members in our network now, so we have quite a wide audience to address. Campaigns are really fun when they're in action. They're a ton of work. I won't lie about that. It is a lot of work for founders. But it's a really good way to engage your customers and kind of convert your supporters, your crowd, the people that have been your champions from day one. They can finally have an actual stake in your company's success.
That's awesome. Thanks for that overview. And yeah, I think fundraising in general is just really difficult and not an easy process. So no surprise that Republic requires you to put some legwork in as well. You mentioned that recently the cap on the amount of money companies can raise has increased. I know that recently the regulations around Reg CF and Reg A raises have changed. So just wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about some of those changes for any audience members that might not be aware, because it's really opened things up and expanded the number of opportunities in this space.
Yeah, for sure. So let me give a little background first. For those of you not familiar with regulation crowdfunding, or these like Reg A, Reg CF acronyms and abbreviations, this all stems from the Jobs Act of 2012 and Title III of the Jobs Act, which was passed in 2016. So the Jobs Act was passed by the Obama administration in order to open up more opportunities for businesses to be funded and create jobs and stimulate the economy after the Great Recession. In 2016, Title III implemented the legalization of regulation crowdfunding, and that's what we call Reg CF. And this is the primary product that Republic first offered and is still our bread and butter. So in 2016, we were spun out of AngelList. Our CEO, Ken Wynn, he was general counsel there, and they, seated him and said, "Ken, we believe in you. Build this platform because people need it." So we did, and 5 years later, we're here. So the SEC has really strict regulations about how this can work, because what regulation crowdfunding allows is for companies to raise private funds from both accredited and non-accredited investors. So an accredited investor is someone who, your angels, your VCs, if they're an individual, it's someone who makes over $200,000 per year in income, or $300,000 for a couple, or has a net worth of over $1 million. That's obviously a very small population of people. So in order to open up the opportunity for more investors and for more revenue, more fundraising capital options for founders, regulation crowdfunding allows you to raise from both accredited and non-accredited. So when this first went into effect, there were a lot of strict guidelines around it. So for example, you could raise only up to $1,070,000 in a 12-month rolling period. Couldn't tell anyone that you were doing this type of raise until you had filed this Form C with the SEC, which announces and makes public your financials in your campaign. There was just like a lot of restrictions on what we could do. I won't focus on what it was. We'll just focus on what it's going to be. So on November 1st last year, the SEC announced these harmonization rule updates, which was very sneaky of them the day before Election Day. But it was really exciting because we worked really hard in partnership with our peers in the equity crowdfunding space, the Association of Online Investment Platforms, to really advocate for some of these opportunities to make this this capital class even more accessible to companies. So starting on March 15th, it's anticipated it'll be March 15th. The Biden administration is reviewing some of recently implemented changes in different agencies. We don't expect the SEC to have any changes to make to this because it was in the works for years, and SEC cabinet has retained, I think, about 80% of who works there in this administration. So starting on March 15th, which is next week, you'll be able to raise up to $5 million in a 12-month rolling period from this regulation crowdfunding exemption. Testing the waters and demo day solicitations will be allowed. So this is something that we're really excited about. It's going to be a huge boon for underrepresented founders who may not have deep networks with friends and family with like a ton of money to just throw at them and get their business started. This will allow them to actually, at your demo day, before you start your campaign and file that form, you'll be able to indicate to folks that you plan to possibly start a raise on Republic and get some soft interest and make a soft circle some of those commitments. So those are some of the changes that we're most excited about. There's a lot more, and they're pretty detailed, so I won't go into too much depth about it, but those are ones that we're really excited about.
That's great. No, I think the only one that I was aware of was just kind of raising the cap on the fundraising limit, but really cool that now people are going to be able to start kind of testing the waters and soft circling some of that capital ahead of time. I think another question that I have is, in your experience, what are the types of businesses that have been most successful on Republic?
Yeah, so the funny thing about regulation crowdfunding, and we get this question a lot, is like, what does it take to have a successful campaign? And honestly, like if we had a perfect formula for that, we'd be filthy stinking rich by now. So, there's still a certain amount of things that go into it that are unique to every business. And we have seen on the platform, B2B businesses have done slightly better than B2C. I think our investors are more sophisticated than, you might think. Like, you might think that everyone who invests on Republic is just like, your grandma who like is having fun online. But it's actually a lot of people start their angel investing journeys on Republic to write a lot of small checks and kind of explore and figure out how they want to invest. So B2B has done slightly better. We also know that our investors are really interested in social impact organizations. Again, you don't have to be social impact focused in order to have a successful campaign, but it's just something that we've seen has been very popular. In terms of like what founders can do to be successful, I think, again, the more momentum that folks can put behind their campaign, the more that they can engage their whole audience across social, across their actual website or wherever they get their kind of inbound interest from, that really supports founders being able to be successful raising a lot of money.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I know I personally, that's how I make investments in companies is through Republic. And it is interesting because you'd kind of think naturally that maybe the B2C companies would do a little bit better because it's a physical product people can hold. But no, it's interesting to hear that the B2B businesses are doing better. Kind of playing off that point. Yeah. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I agree with you. Sometimes it seems like B2C is just more straightforward, CPG, like there's a scale, what retailers they can get into to be successful. But, B2B, again, like there's considerations for enterprise solutions and, the margins can be higher. But again, it's not a hard and fast rule. It's not to say that B2C is not successful. We've had plenty of campaigns do well in both areas, but it's just a kind of trend that we've seen.
Yeah, and interesting too that social impact orgs do particularly well on the platform, which brings up kind of an interesting idea or question that I'd love your feedback on. But Republic itself is a little bit of a social impact organization, right? You're democratizing access to finance, both for investors to invest in great private companies, but also for startups to help them get past that kind of tyranny of the warm intros.
Right.
So I guess my question is, how do you see the future of democratized finance and what role do you see Republic playing in the increased access to these opportunities?
Oh, it's such a good question. We're talking about this all the time. I literally everyone I talk to, I love it because I think we're really at a pivotal moment in our economy, in our history, in technology. I say this to everyone. I truly think that where we're at right now with technology development is the equivalent to the scale of change that we saw with the Industrial Revolution, just over 100 years ago. And so I think there are a lot of signals that are saying that, democratized investing is going to move our economy forward. If, the GameStop situation was not an indication of that, then I don't know what is. But I think people are really people are able to communicate what they want more easily through technology, through social media platforms, through different ways to communicate digitally. There are more ways for people to give their input on things. And it's become clear that, people want to give that kind of input. And so founders that are able to identify communities that are really focused on any, given thing and can really identify that product market fit is creating these awesome opportunities. And so I think because of that, people can really find founders that they believe in, founders that look like them, founders that, are a part of a community that they're a part of, and then they can actually support that. Like we truly believe that you can invest in the future that you believe in on Republic. So my hope is that Republic can play a role in that, in, continuing to support those founders, creating lots of high quality investment opportunities for investors to get on Republic, find companies that they believe in and they see as going to be successful, and as being the companies that are going to shape our society. Like we have seen Airbnb change the tourism industry, we've seen Uber change the transportation industry, and the list goes on. And I think the more that that people can engage with companies in that way, not just as customers but also as investors, I think it's really going to shift the way we think about money and finance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what comes to mind is you guys have already played a part in, helping some of these world-changing companies raise money. Like Robinhood's the immediate one that comes to mind. Like that is literally democratizing personal finance and they raised money on the Republic platform. So
yeah, Robinhood did. And, we also had a recent raise on the first day of Black History Month with Arlen Hamilton of Backstage Capital, which was a really cool, innovative type of raise where she set up an operating company that supports her investment funds. So investors can invest in her operating company and receive some carry. And so she, is another example of like really aligned with our mission to galvanize community. And give your community an opportunity to invest in you and the people that you believe in. So I'm excited that we've been able to participate in that in lots of different ways.
Yeah, no, that's another really great example. That's, democratizing access to institutional investment fund opportunities. Yeah, I had noticed that. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's another great way that y'all are kind of opening up these doors that have traditionally been closed to most people. Kind of going off that though, with kind of diversity and making sure that you're supporting these underrepresented groups and democratizing access to these resources, how does Republic source the startups that you feature on the platform? And what kind of mechanisms do you have at play to ensure that diversity and opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. So we get our companies from a lot of different sources. Now that we are about a 5-year-old company, we luckily have built a bit of a flywheel and are getting a little bit more inbound interest and referrals from partners. Right now, our strongest source of deals, or for those who are maybe not on the investing side, deals are what we call companies that are fundraising. Our strongest source is our venture partners. So our venture partner program is a group now of over 100 individuals and professionals in the investment ecosystem. So venture capitalists, accelerators, people that we call ecosystem builders who are advisors and, find a lot of different ways to support founders. They help us find companies, and it's a really diverse group of people, our venture partners. And so the deals that are bringing us are representative of that diversity. So I think one thing that Republic has done really well is that because that's been important to us from day one, it, continues to be a self-fulfilling prophecy and give us access to a broad range of founders and types of companies. So our venture partners help us find really amazing deals. They've helped us launch a few dozen awesome companies now. And in addition to that, we also our investment team, they're constantly going to pitch competitions, demo days, the Capital Factory, community showcases. There are lots of different places that we look for companies. We also can take cold inbound. So if you go to republic.co/apply, you can find an application for your company, and we review all of those and try to, make sure that we are in touch with someone. If you don't ever hear back from someone, hit me up. We do our best to get back to everybody. We do have a very curated platform as well. So while we are trying to, create a lot of opportunities for founders, we also want to make sure that our investors are, seeing what are, considered high quality companies and have a very likely chance of an exit or an acquisition. Of course, it's not guaranteed. That's, the name of private investing. But we work really hard to do a lot of due diligence. And, we also want to make sure that we're setting up founders for success, right? Like we don't want to invite a company to raise on our platform and have them bomb and then have them hate us and and have them waste their time. Founders' time is so precious. And so we really try hard to protect that. So there are lots of different places that we look for companies, but I'm also kind of scraping the internet, and also our kind of in-person networking opportunities. In some ways, we do operate much like any other investment firm, where we're just finding referrals from partners. But all that to say, there's no like secret sauce or special connection that you need to get in touch with Republic. You can get in touch with us. Again, being at the right moment and place for a Republic campaign is a combination of where your company's at, where your stage is at, where your community engagement is at, and all of those factors that we look at holistically. So you don't have to be friends with me to get a Republic campaign. It's not like our closest partners launch. It's just we really have a rigorous and objective analysis that we try to maintain in order to launch successful campaigns.
Awesome. So I've got one more question, and then I'm going to open things up to the comments in YouTube. So everybody in the audience, if you have any questions, type them out there, and we'll get to them next. But last question is just, what does the future hold for Republic? What are some new initiatives you're excited about? What's next?
Yeah, we are working on so many things at Republic. So sometimes it's almost hard to count. But one thing that I'm really excited about is our Republic Cities initiative. So a few years ago, we started Republic Cities as a way to galvanize these emerging and nascent innovation economies to support companies that are being founded there. So we started with Riverside, California, a couple years ago. We partnered with the mayor, with local accelerators and investment firms to just kind of bring people together for a day to talk about, or an event to talk about, what does this economy look like? How do investors get connected to startups and vice versa? And then, Republic really just wants to be there to fill in gaps and to, provide these additional fundraising options and do our best to, provide our partner resources as well to founders so that we can help you get money, whether it's through us or another channel. Last Friday, we launched Republic Miami, which is really exciting. A lot of you have probably seen in the news that the mayor of Miami is doing a lot to really build some momentum behind the interest from investors and crypto companies and leaders to really support the economy in Miami. So we're excited to launch that. We launched Republic Dallas in November. And I'm planning to launch Republic Austin soon in the next few months. So stay tuned for that. We'll definitely be working with Capital Factory. And so that's one of the many things that we're working on. We're also working on some city funds through our real estate arm. So if you're not familiar, Republic, you can invest in startups as well as real estate, crypto, and video game development. And we're constantly looking to add additional verticals, including as well small and medium businesses through NextSeed, which we acquired last fall, an amazing company in Houston. So the real estate team is working on some city funds so that folks can invest, in a more broader ecosystem rather than an individual opportunity. So we're constantly releasing new things. We released an app a few months ago. So if you haven't yet, go to our website. There's a QR code right at the top. You can download that from the App Store and invest from your phone.
It's a really well done app, by the way. I really like it.
Thank
well,
you.
that's super exciting, Heather. Yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to launch the Republic Cities Austin. And I have this theory that Josh Baer is to Austin and Texas in general what Mayor Suarez is to Miami. So I'm glad to be working with you guys on that initiative. So great. Now let's jump into some chat or some questions from the chat. Excuse me. First question comes to us from Rachel Vaughn. Rachel, good to see you. She says, so great to have you here today, Heather. If you can tell us, I'd be curious which companies you've seen on Republic that really excite you, especially any particular ones that elevate women.
Yeah, totally. So I can't talk about any live campaigns right now, but campaigns that we've completed. One of them that I love is a company called Nano. It was led by one of our venture partners, Liz Ortle. It's a Denver-based company that sets up a marketplace for parents to find on-demand babysitters and child caretakers. One thing that they did when COVID started was work with the city of Denver to, first of all, create free access to the platform for healthcare workers and other essential workers to be able to still access daycare while they were still expected to go to work while the rest of the country was shutting down. And then they also learned from that initiative that parents wanted to that parents were more interested in bringing their kids to another location than having someone come into their home. So they kind of adapted their platform to be responsive to that. And, this organization is really focused on childcare. And as we know, that often falls on women. So having a women-led organization that's supporting women and their goals by, being able to provide really easy and affordable access to childcare, I think is a really awesome mission. If you are interested in looking at companies right now that are led by women founders, you can go to republic.co/companies, and then any company that you see on that page, on their deal card, which is like the small version of their deal page, you'll see little tags at the bottom that have different markers like B2B or cannabis or women founders, minority founders, etc. So you can find any of those. I forget if it says female or women, but you can find that tag, and then you'll see all the companies that tag is associated with. So that's another way that you can find it out. We are working on a search function. It's a work in progress, so that'll be coming soon. But right now, that's the easiest way to find those.
Awesome. There's a Capital Factory tag too. So any Capital Factory companies that are raising on Republic, make sure you check that out as well.
For sure.
Next question comes to us from Ron Stinson II. Great name, Ron. Ron asks, what is the most impactful preparation step a founder can do before they go out looking for investment?
Oh, that's a great question, Ron. The most impactful. I think the most important thing that founders can do before they start looking for investments is to be very clear about what type of capital you want and what you want to come with that capital. Some founders just want cash and want to be able to grow that cash and move on, and they don't want really any outside input. They don't, necessarily need advisors. If that's your story, then grants and competitions, that's probably your way to go. If you really want capital that comes with expertise, VC is often a good way to go with that. Sometimes angels. It's really important to be very articulate about how much money you want, who you want it from, what relationship you want with that money, and what you're going to do with that money. So, sometimes founders will just send me a list and be like, here are all the VCs I'm interested in. It'll be like Sequoia, Andreessen, A16Z, and if we all could raise like that, it'd be great. But if there's no alignment, like one time I had a founder who was a guy like send me a list of a bunch of like female investment companies. And I was like, why do you want them to invest in you? You're not a female founder. So I think just being really clear on your fundraising plan and being very targeted about what organizations can do that is great. If you don't know which firms fit your needs, if you can describe what that is and, again, like amount, involvement, et cetera, then as you start to meet investors and other folks, if you can be really specific about what you're looking for, they will say like, oh, that reminds me of so-and-so. And then, they can help you match those interests to what you're looking for.
Yeah, great answer. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to really be hyper specific and hyper targeted, because not all capital is created equal. And different types of companies require different types of capital.
Right. Yeah.
I think the only thing I'd add,
VC is not made for everyone. Republic's not made for everyone. It really depends on what kind of business you are and what you want to do with it. So totally
100%. Yeah. I think my answer to the question would one, I totally agree with everything you said, Heather. My piece of advice would be to try to qualify investors before you actually go out and execute on a fundraising campaign. And what that really means is build relationships with investors, right? Sit down with them, tell them what you're doing, tell them what you're thinking in terms of fundraising, and really just solicit feedback. See if they are a good fit, right? If they are kind of matching what you're looking for in terms of amount, things that come along with the capital, et cetera. And if you do that, you'll have these relationships lined up. So when you officially launch your fundraising campaign, you're not going through these introductory meetings. You're talking to people that already know you, that already are in some sense interested in you. And so that'll help you save your own time and be more effective with the fundraising.
Right. Yeah. And it's so important to do your due diligence on investors. Like, as they're going to do deep due diligence on you. You should absolutely do it on them as well. Like, you should talk to other founders that have invested in to see what their experience has been like with them. You should look at their track record, look at their other portfolio companies. You really an investment relationship is an intimate one. And so, if you're going to take on that capital, you really need to make sure that you know what you're getting into. So don't let anyone make you think that the investor holds all the power, because you have the opportunity to say yes and no to capital. And I know sometimes it doesn't feel like that when you really just need money, but not all capital is smart capital.
Absolutely. And the only thing I'd say to add on to that is don't feel nervous about asking these investors questions. Yep. Right? It's their job to sell you just as much as it's your job to sell them. So ask them to talk to a founder where, things worked out. Ask them to talk to a founder where things didn't work out. That'll give you a lot of insight into how the relationship with the investor will evolve. Mm-hmm. So this next question comes to us from Daniel Saralu. Daniel has a question. I'm excited for this one. He seems very passionate. I have a question. What can we all as startuppers do to break these stupid policies that the SEC have initiated and weaponized, and in the end work against the entrepreneurs in many countries, I believe? Interesting question, Daniel.
Yeah. Wow. Coming in hot. That's a great question. I'm not sure if I can answer that specifically. I think across the board at the SEC, we are the SEC is like not the enemy. Let's just be clear about that. Like they are the ones who have implemented these policies for us to exist in the first place. The SEC and FINRA, they were the SEC was started in 1933 to protect investors. FDR created the agency in response to the market crash of 1929 and the Great Depression, where essentially a lot of Americans lost all of their wealth because they were making investments in companies that were not properly disclosing their financials. They were not being truthful about their trajectory and their performance. And so all these companies crashed and people lost their money with it. So the SEC is not our enemy. They are obviously becoming more progressive and creating these additional opportunities for folks to be able to invest in these different asset classes. So if you want to continue to advocate, pay attention to the SEC website, pay attention to when they have open comment periods. They, I think, really do go through all of that and listen to all that advice and take advantage of these exemptions. Like just understand how they work, look at Republic, look at other platforms, see what's the right fit for you. In addition to regulation crowdfunding, as Jake mentioned, there's Regulation A, Regulation D. D is for private, is the private round for accredited investors. A is for accredited and non-accredited, but has a much higher cap. It's for larger companies looking to raise up to $75 million now. So there are lots of different opportunities. So I would just say educate yourself and be clear on what it is that you think the SEC could be doing to improve these conditions and let them know.
Yeah, no, they're trying. Use Republic. The more people that are on platforms like that, the more incentive the SEC has to change those guidelines and make things a little easier. Great answer, Heather. The next question we have comes to us from Nathan Heath. And Nathan asks, can you expand a little bit on what metrics you're looking at when analyzing a company for a successful campaign on Republic, particularly the pre-seed metrics?
Yeah, great question, Nathan. Again, we don't have an exact formula for, what makes the perfect company for Republic. We do have some basic eligibility requirements that I'm not sure if I mentioned, but I'll repeat if I didn't. The companies have to be incorporated in the United States. So while our investors can come from around the world, with a few exceptions of different countries' regulations, the companies that raise with us have to be U.S. incorporated. So typically that means a C Corp or an LLC. And you have to have some runway to survive the length of a campaign. We cannot, in good conscience, offer an investment opportunity that might die 3 months later. And then after that, we generally look for companies that are post-product and post-revenue. Again, not a hard and fast rule. To date, we've been kind of pre-seed to Series A, but seed has really been our sweet spot. For pre-seed companies and for seed companies, one of the things that we look most closely at and is a pretty good indicator of the ability for a campaign to be successful is the size and engagement level of your community. So whether that's your paying customers, whether that's your social media following, whether that's some other, however you measure your community, we need to see that they are there and that they're going to show up for the initial part of your campaign to bring in that first infusion of capital. Again, not hard and fast. And for pre-seed companies, I know that can be tricky. We don't, if you are pre-seed, like maybe you'll be pre-revenue, we try to look at everything on an individual basis. We also like to see serial founders who have had previous exits that, can be a proxy for not yet having that amount of traction yet. And there are lots of other ways that we can kind of measure that and see, because again, it also depends on your industry. We are industry agnostic, but engagement for like SaaS B2B enterprise product versus engagement for CPG wellness serum or good, something like that. The traction for both those things are going to look totally different. So size and engagement level of your community,
Yeah, I'm sensing a common theme that community is very important to kind of successful campaigns on Republic. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Next question comes to us, and by the way, keep these questions coming. We're on here the whole time, so if you got any questions, let us know.
Let's do it.
This next question comes to us from Bon Macy. Good to see you, Bon. Bon's the founder and CEO of PhyTau, which is a Capital Factory portfolio company, actually. So Bon asks, if you raise on Republic, is it exclusive, or can you raise outside of Republic at the same time?
No, it is not exclusive. A lot of our companies are raising private rounds before, during, and after their public campaign. So again, when you're thinking about another thing I like to tell founders when you're thinking about like whether a public campaign is right for you, think about your overall fundraising strategy. Of course, a lot of businesses, you kind of have to take it one step at a time. But if you know that you're looking to raise a seed round now and your Series A year from now or 6 months from now, really being intentional about where a crowdfunding campaign would fit into that timeline, and into that storyline, into that trajectory of your business, is really important. So again, and like I said before as well, Republic campaigns are very flexible. So if you are raising a round outside of your CF campaign and you end up closing, more of your round than you expected to, then you can end your campaign early. If you end up not raising as much as you thought you were going to, you could extend it and try to get additional capital from your Republic campaign. So there are lots of different ways that you can be flexible, but it is not exclusive.
Great, great. So this next question comes to us from the audience during the Eventbrite registration. So I don't know who it came from, but they asked, how do you get all of your ducks in a row to start your first round of investment? What are some good preparation materials that help you focus on launching a campaign?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think this goes back to the kind of just general, like, prepare yourself for investing, whether it's Republic or something else. And I would say a couple things. One, make sure your data room is tight. Investors want to know that you are measuring what you're doing and that you're measuring the right things. So having all of that information in place in one spot where you can describe what it is that your company is doing well is really helpful. Refining your pitch and making a clear ask is really important. I know the elevator pitch thing can be annoying and sometimes feel like very forced, but investors are constantly looking for lots of different companies all the time. They're looking at pitch decks like, HR leads look at resumes. They're looking at them very quickly and looking for some, tidbits of information that jump out to them in order to move forward. So being really clear with your deck, being really clear with your ask, is helpful as well, because, it might be that someone thinks your company is great, but you just don't fit into their portfolio style, into their investment thesis, into like the size of check that they're trying to write. So, it's not all like, if you're getting a lot of no's, it's not because you're a bad company. It, could just be that you're not talking to the right people. So being really clear again about what your ask is, what your fundraising plan is, and what kind of money you want is really important.
Definitely.
Yeah. In terms of other things you could do, keeping your cap table clean as well is really helpful. Investors need to know where they're going to fall on it. And so if you are like still doing math and saying, oh, we're going to figure it out and get it to you later, that's going to fall by the wayside. So keeping all that data, your data room, your cap table, your ask, all that really clear and tight is really helpful.
Yeah, totally agree on that. I think the one piece of advice that I'd add is figure out how to really clearly and succinctly articulate what this round of funding is going to do in terms of creating more value in the business, right? An investor doesn't, like, if you're raising money and you say, I'm raising money to buy myself 24 months of runway, that doesn't really make an investor excited, right? Mm-hmm. Show how it's going to add value to the business so that at the end of that 24 months, you can either raise another round of funding at a higher valuation or start growing the business sustainably through bootstrapping or becoming profitable, et cetera. But yeah, totally agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and just to add another thing that thinking specifically about preparing for a public campaign, again, I think thinking about where Republic CF campaign fits into the narrative of your company is very important. And what else, what you're doing at the time that you're also doing a raise is also important. And so, making sure that you have time to dedicate to each of those things, like, to continuing to run your business and do your fundraising is really important. And a lot of fundraising is about storytelling and is about understanding what it is you're trying to accomplish. Who is your market? Like, who are you talking to? Both as your customers and your investors. And so I think when you're thinking about using a campaign to your advantage, one thing that's really nice about a Republic campaign is that you can interact with all of your investors. So there's a discussion board on deal pages where investors can ask questions, you can answer them directly. And then anytime someone makes an investment in your company, they're asked to leave a review as to why they invested in you. So a lot of founders really find that valuable to get like very real-time feedback as to what it is that people saw on your deal page that makes them want to invest. And so, if you are raising alongside your Republic campaign or after, if you can take the insights that you gain from your Republic investors and use that to inform what you're doing with your business going forward, whether that's, your actual business strategy or your fundraising strategy, that I think is really valuable for investors to know that you're using every opportunity that you're presented with to take data that is coming into you and respond to it, understand it, digest it, react to it, and incorporate it. So I think those are really key qualities of a founder that make a big difference in an investment conversation.
Yeah, that's a super interesting form of like social proof as well. You can like kind of see why these other investors invested. I know one of our companies, Blended Sense, they ran a campaign on Republic, and I saw them. They were really actively interacting with all these new investors, and it was just really cool. You're kind of building community around the business as you're also raising money simultaneously.
Yeah. And when your campaign is over, we ask all of our companies to send at least quarterly updates to their investors. The nice thing about a Republic campaign is that in order for us to be able to offer this type of security, so the primary instrument we use is called the crowd safe. So if you're familiar with the Y Combinator safe, it's a simple agreement for future equity. The crowd safe is an agreement where investors are able to invest, but they have limited terms. So they do not get information or voting rights. So in a sense, those investors are, relatively low maintenance because they are not entitled to that information. However, we found that, founders that interact with their investors more and like really engage them and get their input tend to get a lot out of the value of having a large number of investors.
Yeah. So we've got a follow-up question from Nathan Heath, and Nathan asks, having completed a successful crowdfunding campaign in the past, excuse me, I know the time it takes. Is there an average amount of time spent by founders on successful raises on Republic?
Great question, Nathan, and congrats on completing a successful campaign. We don't have like an exact, number of hours per week or anything, but I have heard several founders say, including one who spoke on our founder panel at our Miami launch last Friday, said that it is a full-time job on top of your existing full-time job. So we do our best to make sure that a campaign is a relatively low lift for founders, but again, companies that are able to leverage their campaign to be really present in their business, to present the opportunity to their customers as well as their supporters and potential investors, they tend to do very well. So that's why, when I talk about preparing for a campaign, thinking about how the timing of it and what you want to put into that campaign is going to fit into what you're already doing for your business at the same time, so you can be able to manage all those things at once.
Yeah, I really wholeheartedly agree with that. Fundraising is a full-time job. And I think what companies can do to set them up for success in that area is just have a resource plan for your CEO, right? The CEO should be the one doing the primary fundraising duties. So figure out what tasks he's responsible for every day or she's responsible for every day, and figure out ways to kind of delegate those tasks to other team members so the CEO can focus on fundraising, because it does take a lot of effort and a lot of time. So the next question comes to us from Ron Stenson. Good to see you again, Ron. And Ron asks, with the rise of cybersecurity risks and privacy laws, Ron actually let us know there's a Ron Stinson the third. So yeah, still a really cool name. Anyways, back to the question. With the rise of cybersecurity risks and privacy laws, are investors evaluating these risks during the evaluation?
If you're talking about evaluating those risks in terms of having a live campaign, I'm not totally sure in what context you're talking about, but I mean, yeah, I think for any investor, particularly one that's investing in digital technology, cybersecurity is a top priority. In terms of privacy, one thing that is important to note about a Republic or any regulation crowdfunding campaign is that because it is through this SEC exemption, your financial information will be public. So part of filing your Form C and Prior to that, if you want to raise more than $100,000, you have to have your financials GAAP compliant for at least, I think, the last 3 years of your business, or however old your business is, if it's less than that. So that information will be public. So if that's something that you're not comfortable with, then a crowdfunding campaign probably isn't right for you. In terms of, I can't probably speak too knowledgeably about cybersecurity or privacy laws. But, those are some things to consider. And, there are lots of things that make an investment risky. So, if your business is in something where cybersecurity is very important, I definitely would say that, that is worth investing your time and interest in order to protect your product.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even have anything to add to that. I think you answered that perfectly. Next question comes to us from Nathan Heath, and we are winding up close on time. So looks like we might have time for one more question after this. So we'll just take the first one that comes in. But this question again comes to us from Nathan Heath. Nathan asks, what % of the successful raise amounts do founders generally bring with them from their own community? Is there like kind of a benchmark or?
Yeah. Great question. So we usually ask that founders bring the first $25,000 of their campaign from their existing community. And the reason we do that is, again, in order to show a little bit of traction on your campaign. Our investors are going to be more likely to invest if they're not the first in the door. And so, if you have a community that already wants to invest in you and they can be the first in the door, then that helps to build that initial momentum. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before. Again, sorry if I'm repeating myself, but after that first $25,000 is raised, that's when Republic kicks in some marketing efforts on your behalf at no additional cost to the company. So once you reach that benchmark, we'll send a launch email to our whole subscriber list that just talks about your company and the highlight of your offering to get folks to come to your page. We also will add you to our newsletters, our weekly newsletters. We will do paid advertising, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn ads on your behalf as well. And we'll do performance marketing around that. So there are a lot of different things that we kick in addition to that. So it's not necessarily a percent. After that, in general, for most of our campaigns, the company's existing community usually drives about 30 to 40% of the investment volume, and Republic drives the other 60 to 70%.
Awesome. I'm surprised at how specific you were able to get with that. That's great, though. Good information. Last question today is coming to us from Tret Nguyen. Tret, you are an absolute powerhouse. So glad that you were able to tune in today. Tret asks, hey, Heather, would you say that startups with seasonal products and sales do well in crowdfunding?
Whew, coming in with a tough one right at the end, Tret. I have to be honest, I don't know if I've necessarily looked at that specific, specification really directly. So I don't know if I could say seasonal products do well or don't do well. Again, I mean, a lot of people come to me with questions about like, well, here's a really specific description of my company. Will it do well? And I can't necessarily say. Again, so much of a campaign is informed both by what you can put into promoting your campaign, how you take advantage of our marketing resources, and making sure that you're leveraging every opportunity to create, put your investment opportunity in front of a lot of eyes. For seasonal products and sales, I imagine, again, talking about your storyline and your narrative of like why your whole story for your company. Like if you know your customer story, you should also know your investor story and why they should want to be invested in you. So seasonal products, I'm going to have to look into that one because now I'm curious. But again, it all depends on how you position your campaign.
Yeah, it's all about the community and all about, how you're able to kind of leverage those resources. So it looks like we do have time for one more question. And then I want to turn the floor over to you, Heather, so you can kind of give some final thoughts or anything that you want to say. But this question comes to us from Ethan on YouTube. And Ethan asks, seeing that Republic connects with many different angel investors, do you have any advice for startups trying to get connected with them outside of an equity crowdfund?
Oh, yeah. Good question. So trying to get connected to angel investors is such a tricky thing because, again, angels are individuals. So getting connected to them can be difficult. I would say a lot of really good angel investors are very active on Twitter. So, being on VC Twitter is the thing. I wouldn't say I'm very good at it, but, finding angel investors whose, theses align with yours. Also on Medium, a lot of folks write about their thesis and how they work with founders and give just open advice on Medium is another great resource. We also, again, our venture partners are really awesome individuals. A lot of them are angels. So if you can articulate what is your ask, what you're looking for, send me an email. My email is heather@republic.co, and I'll see if I can think of anybody. There are some angel networks as well, which can be a helpful way to find angels. So the Central Texas Angel Network is headquartered in Austin. They're a good one. They have a direct apply button on their website. You can just go straight to them. There's the HBS Houston Alumni Angels, which is HBS, but I think actually is a little bit broader. Again, there are a lot of angels that are kind of geographically focused or network focused, but there are also angels that are kind of theme focused. So looking for angel networks, I think, is a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'd add too is join the Capital Factory Ventures portfolio. I work with companies on almost a daily basis, helping them identify and reach out to angel investors. There's also tons of awesome online platforms that can help you at least identify where to start and where to find people. One of those is Signal. That's signal.nfx.com. That's a good, just basically database of lots of different active investors, and you can filter by angels, by check size, etc. Twitter is honestly the best. I was not on Twitter up until about 6 or 7 months ago, and I've already met a lot of great investors, great founders. It's really a good place to be and connect with investors. There's vc-rank.com, which is a way for you to kind of plug in information about your company and get a list of investors that kind of fit that criteria. And then, just reiterating those angel networks. There's CTAN, there's the Houston Angel Network, HBS Alumni in Houston. There's Cowtown Angels in Fort Worth, North Texas Angels in Dallas, Lubbock Angel Network. There's really a ton of them. So if you just go and Google, guides to angel networks, you'll find a lot of resources there.
Yeah, there's another also one of our venture partners, Angela Santurbano. She has a newsletter called All the Angels. It's alltheangels@substack.com, where she interviews a different angel, I think every other week. And they're really great detailed information about how these individuals think about their investments and how they find them. And so, that's a good place to start. A lot of angels are super open, like they are trying to learn. Again, also on Republic, you can find people on Republic. So everyone who invests on Republic has an investor profile. You can't search them directly, but if you look at a campaign that is similar or a company that's similar to yours or in your industry, you can go to their discussion board, see who's commenting, and see if you can find someone there who might align with you. And they might have their socials on their investor profile, and some tips if they are reachable or not, if they're taking cold inbound as well. So tons of resources out there.
Another Republic venture partner, actually, Sam Batista, she runs whoisraising.vc, which is another network that kind of showcases deals to angels and venture capital funds. And then last, really selfish plug here. If you become a member of Capital Factory, you get access to our community Slack channel. And every Tuesday and Thursday morning in there, we have an investor ask me anything, where sometimes these are VCs, sometimes these are active angel investors, but they come in and anyone can basically ask them a question about kind of what their focus is, how to get in touch with them, et cetera. So just another tool in the toolbox to kind of help build out that investor prospect network.
Awesome.
All right. Well, yeah, I think, that brings us to kind of the end of the time. While we have a couple of minutes left, I want to kind of pass the floor off to you, Heather. What are you excited about? How can people get in touch with you? Really, the floor is yours. And I think we're going to be dropping in the chat a link as well for, people to kind of get more information.
Yeah. So, love being here. Thank you guys so much for having me. I am a big fan of Capital Factory. So happy to have lots of opportunities to connect with you guys. I've talked a lot about our venture partners in this AMA. And so if you are someone who is an investment professional or in the VC world and are interested in helping Republic find great companies and benefit from our amazing community of really, truly awesome people, please feel free to apply. I am rounding out our VP5 cohort in the next couple weeks. So I sent the link to Trent, who can share it with y'all. You feel free to apply or send it to a friend to apply. And, in the how did I hear about it, just say Heather at Capital Factory. And then my email is heather@republic.co. You can find me on Twitter at Heather Buffo. I'm also on Clubhouse at HBuffie, HBuffie. On Mondays at 7 Central, I believe. I've been participating in a Clubhouse crowdfunding Ask Me Anything with folks from our peers and competitors in equity crowdfunding, but also great platforms, Start Engine and WeFunder, as well as folks who have done rewards-based crowdfunding. So it's a combination of investors and entrepreneurs who have been on both sides of crowdfunding. So if you still have questions about crowdfunding, whether it's equity or rewards, definitely advise you tune into those. They've been super helpful, and I've learned a lot from them as well. So those are a couple things. There's probably a lot more I could plug I can't think of right now. But again, so glad to be with you all. Thank you for the awesome questions. And truly, please don't hesitate to send me an email directly. And if I can't answer your question, I have someone on my team who can, and we'll be happy to do so.
Awesome. Well, Heather, thanks so much for being with us today. This was a great conversation. Awesome questions from the audience. Another self-plug here. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I try to be active as I can. I'm at Jake_Shea. And again, follow Heather as well. She's at Heather Buffo.
Follow all the awesome people. We're here. We're out here on the internet. Let's do it.
Use all the tools in the toolbox, and Twitter is definitely one of those. So anyways, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. This was a great event. And looking forward to hosting another one next month.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.